Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. This Thursday, September 10th. No, it's not. It's October 10th. Where did the summer go? It just seemed like we were trying to get some hay up, and now it's going into fall with deer season. I did get another steer loaded yesterday. He wasn't a happy camper. His name was Junior, and he was a big boy, probably weighs around 1,300 pounds. But he's down to the sale barn. He'll be going through today. We're going to try to catch another one. So, what are we going to talk about today? That's the big topic, right? Yesterday, we talked about when you do it yourselfers and what repairs you can do and what repairs maybe you shouldn't try to tackle. Today, we're going to cover what most do it yourselfers, the common mistakes that take place that we see when someone tries to do it themselves and doesn't know what they're doing. So hang tight. Alrighty, welcome back. My name is Eric, and yes, this is the weekday. Today is Thursday, October 10th, 2024. And today we're going to talk about some of the more common mistakes that I see when do-it-yourselfers are customers. We were all do-it-yourselfers at one time. That's the reality of it. But what are the biggest and the most common mistakes that I see? The first thing would be compression. And you're saying compression. What do you mean by compression? I mean, if you're not checking compression on that engine first, anything you do after that point, if you do not have compression, is for naught. You had just wasted your whole day working on it. Now, can it be, if you have poor compression, can it be something that is fixable? Yeah, if you know how to adjust the valve. So there's the second thing we see common mistakes is that when you go to adjust the valves, you're not getting top dead center and you're not adjusting the valves correctly. Now, are there some machines out there that are, pain in the ass to work on when it comes to compression? Yes. Predator engines from Harbor Freight, ranked number one. Because there, you could have 35, 40 pounds of compression. And if you do a normal valve adjustment where you bring up to top dead center on the intake side and then the exhaust side, and you set it to the specs, good chances are you still don't have enough compression. So what we end up doing is you got one guy doing the valves, adjusting, the other guy with the compression gauge and pulling it over as he adjusts. So we're looking at, is it going up or is it getting worse? And that's how we've learned to do the stuff from Harbor Freight. But no, if you're not getting at least 90 psi, the girl is tired, or your valves are out of adjustment, depending on how old it is. I've seen new stuff sit for a year and have the rings rust in. And sometimes just a little bit of PB blaster inside the spark plug hole and let it sit for a day or two. Pull it over a couple times, get that PB blaster working on that ring. I've seen that let go and go to giving good compression again. But that would be the biggest common mistake, is you're not checking compression, all right? What's the second common mistake? Assuming it's one thing when it's something else. Now, if you're like me, you know just enough to get yourself into trouble, right? So you got a compression tester, you check the engine, and you're getting like 110, 115 psi. Perfect. But you're not getting any fire. So the first common mistake is you jump onto eBay, Amazon, or go to your small engine repair places that sell parts and buy coils. Thinking, okay, I got a bad set of coils. Now, why do you think your coils are bad? Well, because I'm not getting any fire coming to the plug-in. I'm using a spark plug tester. And if you're working on a twin, you should have two of them hooked up together so you can see what each one is doing. Now, if you got good fire on one and nothing on the other, then it may need a coil, or it may need just simple spacing again, adjustment, and or taking some emery cloth and cleaning up the magnet part of it, and also on the coil side, girls. But what most of the time that we see is somebody has got no fire on either coil. And what you need to understand is that machine has got a number of different safety switches on it, okay? And they're designed not to allow that machine to run if any one of them are compromised. And the big one is the seat switch, which a lot of people disable, which I don't agree with, but to each their own. But the seat switch is one, and you could override the seat switch by having the parking brake on, right? And you can start it that way. But each one is hooked together to make it safe for you, all right? So if one of those are bad, or they're not, working properly, you could get a no fire to the coil. And the only way I know of to test for that is to take the cover off the engine, okay? Where you see your coils are exposed. And there's a one wire goes to it. It's called a grounding wire. If you unplug the wire off each one of those coils and it starts firing, that eliminates the coils. Your coils are good. That tells me from that point back to the switch is where the issue is. And start pulling wires is not the right thing to do. You have to understand what that machine is doing and what each safety switch is doing. And in order to do that, you want to hook those two wires back up, one to each coil, and then start looking at, you have the one on the PTO. If you got a manual PTO, is your lever all the way back so that it allows it to start? Because if it's not all the way back, sometimes there's a spring in there that pulls it back. Sometimes that gets worn and it doesn't allow it to come all the way back. You'd be surprised at how many calls we get from customers during the summer that say, Eric, the lawnmower was running great, and I shut it off. I come into the house. I got a nice cold cup of tea or what have you. I went back out, and now it won't start. And you'd be surprised at how many times it's because they didn't disengage the PTO. And that's what runs your mower, right? So if your manual on the dash or on the side isn't all the way back in the out position, it won't start. That's the way they were designed. If your push button isn't pushed down, it will not allow it to start. Each one is working together to make that unit as safe as possible. And it's so that kids can't get on it and start it. Be honest with you. It's there to protect you adults, but the bigger is probably more so for the kids. So they aren't playing on that stuff and being able to start it and get hurt. So that's why I am a big proponent of make sure that all of them are operating correctly. They're designed and there for a reason. Okay, so what are other common mistakes? We've had a number of customers call and say, Eric, look, my machine was running great and mowing and everything, and I got a flat tire, so I took the rear tire off, the whole thing. Remember, I brought it to you and you fixed it, you put a tube in it. Well, when I got home, I put it back on, and now I can't get it to move. On certain models, especially the what I call the cheaper ones, but there's a keyway in there. And a lot of times when you pull that whole rim and tire off, that keyway will drop. So when you put it back on and get it clipped on and held on, the shaft is turning, but the wheels aren't. And that keyway has to be in there in order for it to turn the tires, the wheels, to drive. So that's another common mistake that I see. Simple things, where you had a flat tire, you took the ribbon all off. If that has happened to you or is going on with you right now, just check to see if yours has got in the shaft, the slotted place, for a keyway. Usually it's square stock to go in there. It can be half bone. And then look at your rim and see if you've got a keyway slot. Both of them have got to line up, and then it'll slide in on that keyway. Then put your outer pieces on. So that's another common mistake that we see. Where my lawnmower will not move. And I've checked everything. And the thing is no, you haven't. Because if your lawnmower won't move, that tells me if it's a hydrostatic or if it's a regular, belt driven. They're both belt driven. A lot of times that belt will come off in the back where you can't see it because it's up in where it's hard to get at, and usually right over the top, right? So making sure that belt is on is a must. Before you start pulling the plugs on the hydrostatic transmissions and thinking, well, these look like they're not totally full, so let me fill them. Your hydrostatic transmissions are not made to run on being totally full. It's got to have some air in there, so as it warms up, it will warm up. That will expand, and it needs areas to expand that fluid. So there's a certain level that you need to have in that hydrostatic transmission, depending upon what you have. If you have the hydro gears that are running the Parker pumps or pump drive motors, they're independent, right? Some are. I've seen them both ways. Some have 2 hydro gear pumps, and each pump is going to a Parker drive motor that drives the wheel. Each one has got their own reserve of where you add to it, right? And then there's the one that has the 2 drive motors, but the 1 hydro gear and the 1 filler plastic jug that you can fill up to the add mark to where it's full. And then lastly, there's the other ones that have the plugs that are in it. And the hard thing with that is once you pull one of them plugs, it's hard to put it back in. You can't get a good seal. So before you go pulling on them, make sure you have a repair plug to put in, which is available from MTD, Hydro Gear, all the other ones. And most of your shops carry them now. But that would be another common mistake that I see, is either the belt's off or they overfill the transmission and then it starts binding up. Because it will. Because it's just, there's no place for that extra fluid. And I've seen it blow seals. I've seen it bubble over the top, so it makes one hell of a mess in the garage. All because you didn't know that you had to have so much airspace in there for it to expand. So what are the other things that I see? And don't leave it just to me. This is a participation thing. Is I'm looking to you guys, to also add to this. As shop owners, what do you see as common things that go south on a do-it-yourselfer that's trying to fix their own units. The biggest thing that I'm going to finish up at is when they do a service on their unit, they aren't doing a complete front to back, all right? And when I say front to back, what do I mean? I mean, if you take it to a shop, most reputable shops, they're going to start from the front and work their way back, or start from the back and work their way front. But everything is going to get hit right down to the grease fittings on the spindles for the drive, for the steering, to the spindles on the deck, to checking the blades, cleaning the decks, cleaning the underneath where the blades are, checking the blades to see if they're sharp and not sharp. That's another one I see that is a common mistake by do-it-yourselfers, is they take the blade off and then they take a grinder to it and just get it as razor sharp as they can get it, because it'll cut the grass a lot better. And your tempered steel, if you'll never get a lawnmower blade brand new that is sharp. There's a reason behind it. It was made to operate at that angle. Now, if you take a grinder to it and you start trying to get it as, sharp and as thin, you're tempering that steel, which is making it brittle. And I can guarantee you, if you're doing it razors like a knife, the first little bit it hits, it's going to start taking chunks out of it. The second thing I see with the lawnmower blades is you don't grind evenly, and you end up with a blade that's out of balance that ends up rattling the deck and ruining the spindle that it's resting on to mow. The easiest thing I can tell you for the cost of blades, go get another set. If it's wore down and you got your money's worth out of it, go buy another set and then just put them on. So that comes to another problem I see that's common, is when I'll get a customer that brings their unit in and says it's not mowing right. And I'll ask them, when did it start doing this? Well, I did a service on it and I put new blades and stopped there. Jacked it up on the hoist, take a look, sure enough, the blades are on upside down. When you're putting lawnmower blades on, the wings are always going to be facing up, not down. And I've seen them where you have one that's facing up and the other one facing down, and they're not cutting. I mean, if that's one way to save wear and tear on your blade, if you're running it backwards, but you're not going to get much accomplished. So, understanding that the blades are not made to be sharp, tempering the steel, having them out of balance, and doing more damage to your machine. And thirdly, putting the blades on upside down instead of the correct way. So those are common things that I see all the time. And it's happened to the best of us. I put up my zero turn one year. I was in a hurry and I threw them on. I wasn't paying any attention, and that's what the problem was, is I had the blades upside down. Simple fix, jack your bag up, use the impact, take them off, flip them over, swallow your pride, laugh about it, and move on, right? The thing I'm trying to get across this morning is we all make mistakes, even experienced mechanics. And that's where it's nice to have two guys in the shop, two guys working on it, because you get two sets of eyes. And sometimes the things that you would overlook, the other guy will catch. And that's how we work good together, Claude and I, is that we both know what needs to be done. So if I overlook something, he'll critique me. And of course, if he overlooks something, I critique him as well. When it comes to battery storage, that's where I'm going to finish up, I guess, unless I think of something else. I get asked this a lot. Should I take the battery out and take it inside where it's warm? Should I unhook the battery so that it can't feed? Should I put a battery maintainer on it through the winter? What I can tell you in the past 7 to 10 years is the batteries are not lasting. They're recycled batteries. And instead of getting, that battery you throw in your truck and it's good for 4 or 5 years, or in your lawnmower for 4 or 5 years, sometimes 8 or 9 years, they're not out there anymore. You can't buy them that are new batteries. Everything is recycled. And every time you recycle it, I think the shelf life, and in the machine life gets less and less and less. And one of two things are going on, all right? So if you're having problems with your battery during the season, you want to find out and make sure that the unit is charging. And one way to do it is you can buy this. It's a box with 2 jumpers on it. It's Harbor Freight for $20. Put it on the positive side of the battery, one on the negative side of the battery, and look and see where it reads. It should be reading 12 volt. Start your unit up, and that should climb up to 13, 14, and then start dropping back down based on the regulator telling it to, this is where, we need it to be at 12, and then it stops charging. But if it draws on it, it'll start charging again. And that's how you check your charging system. A lot of times people just think it's a bad battery when in fact the unit's not charging back. And especially if you have electric PTO, if it's not charging back or it's not charging back to full potential, what ends up happening is a PTO, the electric PTO will drain that battery and it will quit. The whole unit will quit. And then you have nothing, it's dead. Because it's trying to run on just the alternator. And it can't. The charging system isn't enough to run that PTO, electric PTO. So on that note, I expect in the comments, you guys, what are the things that you guys see? I mean, you guys probably been at it longer than I have. But the biggest thing is taking on something that you know nothing about and then expecting miracles of getting it working again without putting the time in and the effort into knowing how you're going about doing it. So on that note, you guys have a great Thursday, and we'll catch you here bright and early tomorrow morning. I want to do a complete video from front to back with Claude and I on a lawnmower and explain to you every step of the way what our thought process is and why we do what we do. So on that note, you guys have a great Thursday. Again, thanks so much for watching. Greatly appreciate it. Your comments are greatly appreciated. You guys that are subscribing, thank you so much. You guys that aren't, I appreciate you every day. Catch you here tomorrow morning.